I'm glad Rezzie's here. That poem of Charles's, it begins, as I at last, as I barbarian at last, although slowly could read Greek, had grey-eyed Athena, and it goes on. Charles is reading at that lithograph portrait on the wall of Athena. Yeah. Just take that poem. It's a beautiful poem. There's the Greek cadence, and it moves on into that strange feeling of visiting famous times and famous places in the midst of one's own affairs through books. There doesn't seem any reason. That poem was written at least 40 years ago, since I read it 40 years ago. I'm complaining about the length of time it's taken to notice Charles Reznikoff. Not that Charles Reznikoff, so far as I know, cares. The last time I tried to praise Charles to himself, he had once interrupted to say, "George, I'm sure we both do the best we can." A difficult man to praise, and this is my opportunity. Well, and all the same, that isn't just random eccentricity on Rezzie's part. And if it was modesty of extraordinary force. Rezzi wouldn't listen to praise because he intended to disregard condemnation. And this was... some of these poems in the collected were written in 1918, and some of them earlier, I think. There was the issue of free verse to begin with. And of course, Reznikoff couldn't make use of the Whitman-esque breadth of the Midwest poets, and he didn't have the authorization of the New England scenes. These were poems of the city. Instead, a small man starts to climb the stairs out of the subway, and he sees the moon shining through the entrance, whereupon the world stops and is illumined. Poem after poem of the city. Which is experienced as the narrow end of the funnel. They're poems of the metaphysical dimension, actually. The metaphysical dimension being the absence of terror, or the disregard of it, down to the very chewing gum stuck to the pavement, which is in that poem.
Turn on the light back, please.
The narrow end of the funnel in the poems. The proofs in these poems are images, and the images are proofs, and the proofs are overwhelming. But Rezzi, who didn't permit praise and disregarded condemnation, had bought a letterpress. Every evening after work, he set 2 lines of verse, teaching himself to set type as he worked. I'm afraid is on. I said Rezzi wouldn't listen to praise because he intended to disregard condemnation or neglect. He had bought a letterpress, and every day, every evening after work, Reznikoff set 2 lines of verse, teaching himself to set verse as he worked at it. And this way he printed all of his first books by himself. We, Mary and I, that is, have carried these poems in our minds through everything that has happened to us since we were 19 or 20 years old. I don't know of any poems more pure, or more purely spoken, or more revelatory. I confessed before, I think the young of my generation were luckier than the youngest in this audience, in that we had to go searching for our own tradition and our own poets. What we found was Reznikoff, and he's played, I cannot say how important he has been to us, and I think it will be to you. And this is what I wanted to say to Charles Reznikoff when he said, "George, I think we all do the best we can."